Hey, welcome to this episode of Life on the Streets, the greatest show on earth. I'm your host, Rick,
I'm Tom.
and we've got a great show for you today. We got some amazing guys coming to us from the UK over across the pond. Disregard their accents. I mean, yeah, we were going to offer translation, but our translator said no. But before we get going, uh, as you guys know, we always start off with our tomfoolery moment. So we're going to kind of go into that. So, Tom, I have a question for you.
Okay.
All right. If you had a man crush, okay,
Okay.
who would it be?
Oh, man.
Yes,
I don't know.
I know you have one. So don't lie.
Um, honestly, dude, I don't know that I would say that I have like a man crush on any particular one person, but
You're in a safe space. It's
there's
okay.
no there's several guys out there that that are just total studs, and a lot of them were um like old Vietnam veteran guys, and the stuff and the things that those dudes did during the war. They were all part of MACV-SOG, and listen to their
Okay.
stories and stuff. Like those dudes, you just have to like you put them up on high because they're just such badasses.
Got that.
And
Okay.
then there's a new guy that I found that
Go ahead.
he's also this guy is a total badass. Um, he was
I'm flattered, but let's go with who you.
saw you. So I saw this dude, I saw this guy on a show that was called, I think it's called Secrets Declassified. And so this guy, and so I after watching his story and what was going on, because he actually was part of catching Che Guevara.
Okay.
And so I looked him up online, found out he had a book, and so read the book. And this guy he was born in Cuba, was a Cuban citizen. Um, Prior to Castro taking over, he comes to the United States. He's a young man, like I think he was like 15, 16 when he moved to the States, went to college, ended up when Castro took over, he started becoming involved with the anti-Castro movements and stuff. Ended up hooking up with the CIA, returned back as a an infiltration unit prior to the Bay of Pigs.
Okay.
Was running around collecting intel, sending it back to the CIA and whatnot. And then, as we all know, the Bay of Pigs went to shit, and we didn't really back those Cubans.
Okay.
Um, but he was able to escape out of Cuba as one of those infiltration guys. Then he goes on to do a bunch of other stuff in Guatemala, and
Okay, dude, this is not a man crush. This is stalking. How about we get to what the man crush is?
he's a total badass. His name is Felix Rodriguez.
Okay.
Like, and the book that he has is called Shadow Warrior. It's a phenomenal book. And the dude is just, I mean, he's just an absolute stud with some of the stuff that he did, and the just absolute balls of steel this guy had to go and do the things that he did was just incredible. So yeah, so he's a badass. John Stryker Meyer, former MACV-SOG guy, part of Army Special Forces, did a bunch of stuff in Vietnam, and a lot of that was, I listened to a lot of like his book and the stories he was telling on Audible when I was on the job, driving around or whatever. And it was one of those things where you're like, there is no freaking way this dude is living through this situation that they're in. But he's also the guy reading the book. And so you know that he made it through, but you're still like on edge as he's telling the story. And then you're just like, man, these guys were just some kind of beyond normal human dudes.
Okay. So I get that you have
So that'd be a man.
you have military daddy issues. I get that.
Whatever.
Okay. Who is your man crush?
I don't really have a man crush per se.
You like danced around this whole question, gave us this History Channel, military history lesson, But you didn't tell us the
I
question.
don't have like a singular man crush.
Okay, so you're attracted to everybody.
No,
All
I'm
right.
gonna forget.
We'll just leave it at that. All right, guys. So, so today we've got our guests are from, like I said, the UK across the pond. They do an amazing um, nonprofit called PTSD 999, right?
Yeah.
And well, I'm going to let you, Gary, Roger, introduce yourselves. Tell us what you got going there first before we go into anything else.
My name's Gary Hayes. I'm the co-founder um, of PTSD999. I've been given a rather grand title as CEO as well. It's just a badge. It don't mean anything. It's just a badge. When it all goes horribly wrong, it's my head on the chopping block. Um, we've been going since around 2015, midway through 2015. We started off as a charitable incorporated company. We wasn't a fully registered charity. And the idea was that we would just reach out via social media after my experiences in the police service over here in relation to very poor, if non-existent treatment around PTSD and mental health. It cost me my job, and I'm sure we'll cover that later on. But it was just to get people to engage with us, just to open up, trust somebody else outside of the job, someone that they could talk to who understood exactly what they were going through. I was diagnosed as a chronic complex sufferer of the condition. Lots of other bits and pieces added on to that. And in 2023, March of 2023, we became a fully registered charity or charitable organisation. Um, it's been a huge struggle in relation to keeping it going, keeping it alive. Finances in the UK at the moment are probably at their all-time low, so there's not a lot of money knocking about. But we're still engaging with all of our emergency services, all of the other services that realistically are first responders, our prison service, our security services will help anyone that needs just a shoulder to lean on, for someone to be kind. And that's how we met Rog. Roger's come on board as one of our partners. Roger's doing some amazing stuff in the world of fitness and madness for us, raising funds. And yeah, I'll let Roger talk a bit about himself.
Perfect. Roger.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, my name's Roger. I run a small company in Lancashire, northwest of England, the best place to be, in my opinion. I met Gary about 3 or 4 years ago through a different venture. And we just got chatting and, looked into what they did. And it's just something that combines, because I'm very military, ex-military veteran focused. But Gary enlightened me to the fact that, a lot of people go through it. Emergency services, which I didn't really think about. I mean, they do a really good job. They're on hand when you need them, but what happens in their lives, it's kind of down the same road. So I thought, you know what, let's get involved. I had an opportunity to get involved with Gary and Graham and the team. And we just started from there. I've just done a 10K run for them, raised some money. We're doing a big event next year. But the story behind that is I'm doing a cycle ride. I don't cycle. I don't have a bike. And I'm nowhere near fit enough to do it. Now, the method, the madness here is that these guys and girls on a regular basis put themselves out of the comfort zone. So I thought, well, I need to do that to get, to make it worthwhile and to really push myself, and try and put myself in a position where I do struggle. I am struggling. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. But at the end of it, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, which is what we're all about. Um, so yeah, and we've been to a couple of shows. Well, I've been to one show actually. Sorry, Gary, not a couple. I've been to one show. I'm going to do a course with Gary in a couple of weeks to see what it's all about. So yeah, it's about getting involved and helping these guys out because they do amazing work and there's a lot of people out there that can benefit.
Wonderful. So I have a question for you. I'm looking at the backdrop of where you are, And you got a
Yes.
sign up there that says sustain the blue or
Sustain blue, yes.
yeah, sustain blue. Uh, what's that? What's that about?
That's our company logo. So I run a company, a compliance company
Ah,
that
okay.
keeps businesses with compliance. Um, so that's what I do, bread and butter day to day.
Perfect. Wonderful.
But I want, it's Sustain Blue R connected with PTSD 999. I want it to be not just me, but everybody I work with, everybody I work for, all my clients are getting involved. It's a big thing for us.
Well, I love what you guys are doing. I love this bicycle 10K that you're doing. I mean, that right falls right up the alley of our motto is that sounds like a bad idea. When are we starting?
But
So-
it's not 10K, it's 450K.
Oh, 450K. Well, that's an even
Yes.
worse idea. So we should probably
Yes.
start tomorrow. So I love
Yeah.
that philosophy, right?
Holy cow.
Holy cow. Yeah, well, I will tell you, I am a bicycler. I love road biking. I've done it for a long time, and I
He
I
crashes a lot.
I do crash a lot. You
Right.
know, um, that's not even an exaggeration. I do crash a lot, but the harder you crash, the more you don't want to do it. I'm getting to that point where it'll sink in. You know, I have a philosophy, and that is that which does not kill me only makes me not want to do that again.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, question for you guys. So, in the UK, is PTS treatment for like emergency services and law enforcement, um is that like a government funded or sponsored type of thing? You know what I mean? Like for instance here, it's not. Like I mean, in especially in Colorado, it's not.
Well, they're working on grants, but it's not funded by the government.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in a different aspect, like through the here through the VA, the Veterans Administration, right? You can get treatment, you can go and you can get diagnosed, and then you can get rated as a disability for PTS, and then the government kind of pays for that treatment after that. So I don't know if it's the same way with guys that are in your military, if it's the same way as that or if there's government funding that helps those guys and helps get them the treatment that they need, or
To
is
be fair, Tom, I wish that we had your model. So if I was to go back when I was in our military back in the 80s, mental health was something that was certainly not spoken about, especially in my regiment. We were a frontline infantry regiment. And if there's any sort of, dare we say, UK-based guys that listen to this and girls, I would suggest that I served in the finest regiment in the British Army, that being the Royal Green Jackets, the 3rd Battalion. And we were hardcore. We was there. Our motto was swift and bold. But one thing we never ever spoke about was mental health and well-being. It was frowned upon, especially if you were perceived to be a leader or whatever, or a stronger individual. Um, and that's how it is in this country. We as children we fell over, we grazed our knees, and we get a clip round the ear hole from your parents for falling over, and it was just a case of get on with it. You might be bleeding, it might be sore, but crack on. When I joined the police, I joined our British Transport Police. I was aware, and I was an old, dare I say, recruit. I think they classes as mature students was the term that was used. I was about 33, and basically we had very little input into dealing with trauma, especially on the rail network. Um, and again, mental health was something that was very rarely, if at all, spoken about. It's almost a taboo subject. And over the years, a lot of officers across our emergency services and other services, the prison service, etc. There's been a hell of a lot of suicides, unfortunately, and that's on the increase. And our government at this time are choosing not to render it a problem. the emergency services choose to not acknowledge that PTSD is a major issue now in long-term sick with its officers, and in fact, the root cause of a lot of suicides, unfortunately, in both young men and women within the services to older members. And there is no funding. We are struggling to get any sort of government grants or funding in that respect. I would love if we could go back a few years when people were um, donating money or doing a lot of fundraising for us, where we could actually contribute to the cost of treatment for individuals who desperately need it. Because sadly, over here at the moment, National Health Service is struggling. They can't deal with the influx now of mental health issues, and people are waiting somewhere around 18 months to be seen. And that's
Oh,
no good to
wow.
someone that's struggling, you know.
Mm.
And unfortunately, with PTSD, there's often other add-ons, and that being addictions, whether it be drink, drugs, it could be anything. And our health service will not treat that individual until they've cleared up the addictive side of their condition. Once they've done that, then they can start that process, yeah, in sort of working on their mental health. So, unlike you guys, you look after your veterans, you take care of your veterans. We certainly don't. And for me, it was heartbreaking as a police officer coming across rough sleepers who were ex-armed forces, and even I remember coming across some individuals who were one guy sleeping rough was a serving police officer in the
Oh, wow.
Metropolitan Police. He'd fallen right down on his haunches. His marriage was broken. He was slipping down that horrible dark rabbit hole. And there was nowhere for him to go because he just couldn't and didn't want to speak out. Through fear of being rejected by everyone and all the associated issues that we had with it. Yeah, firemen we used to come across sleeping rough. It was just awful. And there was, for some of them, it was a life choice. I'm not going to run away from that. But for the vast majority, it was situational stuff that they couldn't avoid. It just
Right.
come crashing down around their ears. And there was no one there to support them. And that's why I set up our little organisation, because of what I put my family through and my children through, because I was that alpha male, for want of a better word, because everyone had put me on this big pedestal. Big old Gazzy's always in there, first one in through the door, first this, first. And you actually start to believe that hype, and
Mhm.
it's wrong. Every now and again, you need someone, like we spoke earlier on with Rick, you need someone to come and bite you in the arse to give you that reality check. We need that land shark to come and give you that nip in your heels just to bring you back to reality. Because at the end of the day, you're a human being with
Right.
emotions and feelings.
Well, and I would say, and I want to hear from you on this also, Roger, but um, I would say that it is becoming more of an accepted or moving to the forefront here in the U.S. as far as not just military. Military really set it off here. They started recognizing it with returning military vets and stuff. So it really got its start here in the U.S. with our military, but it's transitioned over the last 10 years into first responders. And I'm not just talking police. I'm just like you guys. I'm talking law enforcement. We're talking fire. We're talking emergency medical services. We're talking nurses and doctors. Um, Across the spectrum of what I consider first responders, because we're all in the same boat. We all see the same nastiness in the world, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that we have come a long way. I don't, and I'm hoping you guys are following suit at some point, but we have come a long way. We still have a long way to go. Would you not agree, Tom?
Oh yeah, totally. Especially on the side of first responders. We
Yeah.
definitely have a long way to go on that.
Um,
And not only, I mean, it's for a number of things, but we definitely have a long way to go on the mental health aspect for our first responders.
I mean, we're
We've come a
seeing,
long way with the mental health issues with our veterans, But we still have a lot of work to do to try and kind of equalize that with first responders.
And you know, the problem, and you spoke to it earlier, Gary, we're seeing, I mean, it's been called a national health crisis here, is the suicides
Mhm.
of first responders and military. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's been labeled a national crisis here, because our numbers are so high. So I mean, so yes, I think we're doing the work. We're just not there yet, and I don't know if we're going to be there, you know, in the near future. Or I don't know what that looks like, how long it's going to take. It's going to take a lot more work. Um, Roger, you're seeing it from a military perspective, right? So let's hear. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I went through something very different too. I mean, obviously, PTSD can span across, any situation, whether it be something in a war zone or something on a road accident or even personal circumstances that you just can't get away from. So there's all sorts of different avenues there. But I mean, we're going back to the way vets are treated. We look at videos of American vets, traveling in uniform. They're so respected, and thank you for your service, thank you, for this, that. But for us, when we're in the services, we're in the services, we're doing a job, and we're proud of what we do. I mean, I was so proud to be in the Air Force, and I really felt that I was doing my duty for the country. When I came out, I mean, I left the Air Force through really, really bad circumstances, just like Gary. I had my issues. I put my family through it, and enough was enough, and I had to. But it didn't stop there, But the support afterwards, it just wasn't there. Even now, or through the past 3 or 4 years, I've been to the doctors. I've been to the hospital a few times, and you say you're a veteran, you say you're military, it just doesn't resonate. Purely for the fact that if you're speaking to somebody who's not military, who doesn't understand the camaraderie, the family that you were in, that's gone. It's not there anymore. So what do you do? And you're kind of enclosed in yourself. You don't know what to do, which is what's happening to a lot of people. But like Gary said, you come across veterans on the street, you come across veterans that they're such in a bad state, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see, because these guys, big, strong, tough guys and girls who stood on the front line, whether it be military, whether it be emergency services, they haven't got that anymore. It's like they've got no purpose, and that's the way it manifests itself. So, yeah, we do need a better system, and there's a lot to be done. There is a lot to be done, and I'm with Gary on this, pretty much.
So how are
You
you
know.
guys seeing your path forward here? What are you looking at as far as getting this a different mindset or a different approach? And I understand you're one charity, right? And things are tough and you're struggling, but I mean it starts with a single step, right? Every
Yeah.
journey starts with a single step.
Do you know what, Rick? I've adopted this attitude of very much going back to my youth as a young rifleman in the Green Jackets. It was simply head down, arse up, and crack on. And I'm just driving this forward. I've got a great little team around me. We've got amazing people like Roger partnering with us now. And if it wasn't for people like Rog, who, let's be clear, with PTSD, let's break down a lot of barriers and stigmas right now. That is so specific to you as an individual. We can't just throw a big PTSD blanket over everyone and say, you've all got PTSD because no, it's so wrong. We need to stop doing this. The PTSD that individuals suffer with, whether it be through a single trauma or repeated trauma, is specifically that person's trauma and nobody else's. So we can't interject and say, well, no, everyone saw that one incident. We need to look at this individual for who they are and what they've done and what they've dealt with. So for us, it's like every day's a struggle. We're a little fish in a big pond full of sharks. charity is a business, and it's horrible because we're all out there technically with our begging bowls asking people to donate. We're raising the awareness through our presentations that we give. And Roger's coming to one with me next week. We're delivering to some officers in the West Midlands of the country, and Roger will see the presentation, and we don't dress it up. We tell people where it is, and they're going to go through an hour and a half of a lived experience. But the good thing in that room is that every officer, whether they be police, fire, ambulance, prison, it doesn't matter, security services, everyone in that room has had a specific trauma, and they will acknowledge it. And all we're doing is just opening the door for them to go, do you know what? Yeah, I'm going to have a little cry now. It doesn't matter. I've now realised why I've behaved in the manner that I have. But it shouldn't be for me and Roger to instigate that. Our government, our emergency services should have things in place. As I say, I only wish that we looked after our veterans in the manner that you guys do. I was fortunate enough to come over to Florida back in 29 and 2012, and we went to the SeaWorld thing and watched the orca do its thing. But before the show started, I'm sure you're both more than aware, they asked for any veterans to stand up. And my kids are going, Dad, stand up. And I don't do all that. I'll just sit there and, that's me. And there was a fella sat behind me, and he went to me, he said, Sir, he was a big American guy. He said, Sir, you a veteran? So I was like, oh, yeah. So he went, well, stand up. And he got quite to the point. You think, all right, I better stand up. So I stood up for that, and everyone clapped and cheered, and I'm embarrassed and whatever. And then we sat down, and then this guy was spoke about anyone in emergency services from here or abroad. So my kids are going, Mum, Dad, you better stand up. And this guy sat behind me. He just literally put his hands on both my shoulder and the wife's shoulder. And we're like, yeah, we're standing up because my wife was a police officer. We don't have that here. We have the complete opposite, unfortunately. There's very little respect for our veterans from the armed forces, and there's absolutely next to zero respect for our emergency service workers. It's shocking. It really is.
That's unfortunate. Yeah. I mean, I like hearing that we're doing a what you perceive as a good job. I think that I think we're working on it here. I think we're moving in the right direction. Still have a lot of work to do. But it takes getting the message out, and for me, it's nice knowing that we're not alone in this, because you always wonder what goes on in other parts of the world. How are they dealing with it? I mean, we sat down and did, compared apples to apples, oranges to oranges, right? And we sat down and we looked at how we treat our first responders, our military here in the U.S., as compared to how they do it in the U.K., right? As compared to how they do it in Germany or France, right? I think we're going to see huge disparities, right? But why? Why are we seeing such disparities?
I mean, I don't know about Rog. I think it's all down to a lot of misinterpretation of the condition and the negligence behind the respective part of the emergency services going, well, do you know what? It's actually our fault that this individual's struggling because we've been sending them to trauma after trauma after trauma. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that in the jobs that we've all done, and Roger's story is a very hard-hitting one. We've all experienced trauma, but there's no one there to help us, to guide us through that. And if you're in a supervisory role, you're looking after your team, and at the same time, you're putting yourself right at the end of that queue. Then everyone else, as long as the team's working and functioning, that's great. But everyone else is suffering because you're suffering. And blokes, guys, whatever you want to label us as, we are the world's worst for not opening up and showing our emotions. Because we're the alpha males. We don't cry, we don't get upset. The only time we get upset if someone's overcooked me steak or something like that. You know what I mean?
But I see this with females too. I mean, would you not agree?
Oh yeah.
I mean, we talk
absolutely.
about we're the alpha males, but I mean, we know a lot of female first responders and military who are suffering the same thing, and
Yep.
they're as alpha as they come, right? Um,
Oh yeah. And
so
the thing
and if
that sorry, Rick, I was just going to say, I think the overriding fact is, it's one that I'll always go back to, is we don't encourage people, male or female, to talk about how they're feeling. Let's forget all the stereotypical ways that we used to look at stuff and
right,
trauma, and people doing specific roles, especially those in say the special forces world or the world that you two have been in for many many years. It's completely different to what Roger and I have seen and done. However, at the end of the day, who was there for you guys? Who was
just each
actively
other.
there to encourage you to talk? Nobody.
No.
Well, that's
You
the
know.
thing, just each other. And
Mm.
Yeah.
and the thing that and you correct me if I'm wrong, okay, for you,
Okay.
because I can't speak for you, but I can for me, and I know that you've been a part of that. So I'm going to say this, all right, is I'm a very stoic individual. I'm a very outgoing person socially and stuff like that, but interpersonally, I'm a very stoic individual. You know, I downplay a lot of stuff. I've downplayed many of my injuries, which were quite significant. You know,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
downplay those. I don't talk about stuff. And, you know, and Tom and I, we've had many of these conversations, and many of the guys within our team have had these conversations, right? But generally, it doesn't go outside those guys.
Yeah.
And a lot of times too, I think what ends up happening is like you said, when you're, going from trauma to trauma to trauma, or, you're doing like call to call to call, and, you could have the call where you respond to a vehicle accident and two kids were ejected and killed, an adult was ejected and killed. You wrap that up and now you're going to a domestic violence or you're going to something else. And I think for the most part, I think a lot of times what we end up doing is we just kind of try and compartmentalize all that stuff and just put
Yeah.
it in little boxes in our heads. And then later on is when you start recognizing and feeling the effects. I think our families, our friends can see the transition in us and that type of thing. But I think overall, starts to hit home later on in our careers when we maybe start slowing down from that type of stuff and we move on to something else or whatever. And then you're starting to go, okay, all right, now I see what everybody's talking about, and this is definitely a freaking problem
Yeah.
all across the board, you know?
Right. And where you have to do what did Sarah call it when we had her on the show? Unpacking those boxes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's just like anything else. You only have so much room for, so much junk. And that's what she called it, junk, right? That you got to start unpacking those boxes because you're running out of room. Um, so, I mean, I think that there's starting to be a huge understanding or realization of this, but it's still not, I think it's still slow in coming for,
Mm.
for many of us, you know, and I don't know.
I think it's just largely a cultural issue
I
at
think
this
it
point.
is. I think it really is. And most officers in I can only speak for law enforcement though. There's that stigma attached that if I do that, I unpack my boxes, I talk to somebody, I do this, then there's a fear, and whether it's real or perceived, it doesn't make a difference because if you perceive it, it's real to you, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes it really is real, is that you're going to be deemed unfit, right? To do the role that you serve in, whatever that role is, and that you're going to lose something close to you and you're going to be ostracized, not just by the organization, but especially when you get into certain groups by people that you considered friends or, you know, colleagues, right? Where they start to view you differently. And I think that again, whether it's real or perceived, it doesn't make a difference because to the person who's perceiving it, it's real.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And how do we get beyond that? I mean, what do you guys do for that?
Well,
Um,
it's hard. It's hard. I mean, I was just thinking there while you guys were chatting. when somebody leaves the military in this country, we're always perceived as having baggage. We're always perceived as having issues, regardless of whether it's Air Force, Army, Navy. There's such a stigma around veterans, and that when we come out, or when somebody leaves the service to go into employment, there's a perceived vision there that everybody's got an issue because of where they've been, what they've seen, and there's a brick wall there straight away. So
Right.
you get like for me, I got turned down for interview after interview after interview after, you know, but being in the military, you would think coming into Civvy Street, those skills, the discipline, the punctuality and things like that would be a godsend. But for us, it's not. It seems to be the opposite, and you have to prove yourself. And there's a lot of problems around that, really. So I think
So you have to prove you're
it's
undamaged instead of them.
well, in a way,
Think
yeah,
that you
yeah, in
are.
a way, yeah, because
That's interesting.
it is because if you're not military and you see
Tom's
somebody
got
that
a
is
look on
military,
his
thinking,
face.
"Oh, Gary, do you agree with me there? Do you agree with that?"
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And
Yeah,
you've nailed it, Rog. You come out with this perceived set of skills, irrespective of what part of the service you've come from. You're dependable, you're reliable, you're strong, you're fit, and you're switched on, and you've got good leadership potential. However, that all goes. You might as well be pissing in the wind with that with a lot of employers because they just do not look at that set of skills that you've got.
no,
And sadly, that's equally applicable to the men and women that leave our emergency services and try and source employment outside of it. It's just frowned upon, and then we all struggle with that honest belief that yes, we've got that skill set, but how now do we deliver that, deploy that in Civvy Street? It's just crazy.
That's wild to me. That's just that's hard.
yeah,
That's literally hard to fathom. I mean, especially here in the U.S. I mean, in the U.S., if you're a vet, there's tons of companies, on the civilian
Actively
side,
seeking you.
or even law,
yeah,
getting into being a first responder, law enforcement, that
Yeah,
they're actively seeking those types of people because they have those skill sets and they have life
yeah,
experience,
yeah.
I
dealing
mean,
with people,
yeah. I mean, to be fair, there is companies here that do veterans, veteran programs and are actively looking at veterans. So probably I was, incorrect there to label the entire country
Sure,
under
sure.
that
No,
umbrella.
understood. And I think that
But
came across as
yeah,
is
yeah,
that it's not all inclusive, but it's a
no,
problem.
it is a problem. And if you have got issues, if you have um, had problems, then employers, and especially me, if I took somebody on, which I'm looking to do soon, there's probably maybe not a veteran out there that wants that I can do what I want to do, but I'd rather take somebody and work with them and train them and give them that opportunity to show what they can do because I know what I can do, and this is where I am today. I've taken what I had and the issues I had and turned it completely around and driven the other way. So I'm one of the lucky ones, but everybody doesn't get that chance. So we need to make sure that people get a fair shot, a fair crack at the whip. And like Gary said before, yeah, we can't not say that there is, you've got to have the drive, and some veterans, are in that position through their own doing. We can't ignore that. But the support needs to be there. And you were saying, how are we going to drive this? Well, I'm in my part of the world, in Lancashire, around that area. Um, I'm going to go and speak to the constabularies here and the ambulance and the fire service and make them aware of what the service PTSD 999 can do and how they can, and get us out there. So just trying to spread that word, really.
Yeah.
Great. So, how successful are you guys thinking that your message is getting out there?
On a personal level, when we deliver our presentation, our awareness presentation around PTS or PTSD, we often get almost the same response wherever we go. and that is it's a roller coaster of emotion. There's tears, there's laughter, there's moments of absolute quiet. Um, but it's that simple recognition from our audience, and it doesn't matter who they are. And I delivered to an organisation outside of our emergency services last week, and the response I got from them boys and girls was unbelievable. And they then go away and they talk to people. Now, I'm doing a presentation on Thursday of this week to our security services. Now, my point of contact there, we had a bit of a giggle on Monday. He phoned me up and he says, "Here, go." He said, "You was with such and such police force last week, wasn't you?" So I said, "Yeah." He went, I'm hearing some really good stuff." And I'm like, "Hold on a minute. Who did you plant in the room? I know you're our security services, but that's tearing the arse out of it." And apparently, there's a guy who was on that course who's now on this course that I'll be attending on Thursday. So it's stuff like that. People, wherever we get asked to go, we've not knocked on someone's door and said, "Can we please come and deliver this?" We, and I need to look at it, and that's why Roger's on board, because he's got the brains and the gumption to get into people. But we've been doing everything word of mouth. So via the presentation, it's hard, it's punchy, but it's real. People are talking, and so we've delivered up and down the United Kingdom and even up in Scotland, and that's all come about because people have been talking about us. We just need that to be now generated into some strong funding so we can continue with what we're doing, and then start, which is my absolute aim, is to start contributing, or if not paying, towards treatment for the men and women that need it, serving or retired, and or family members. So,
Nice.
it's good. Roger's business sense is phenomenal, and Roger's got a lot of contacts, and it's just amazing people like Roger that have contacted us. And because we're all singing off the same song sheet, Roger's got the bit between his teeth, and he's ensuring that all of his business partners and those people that he's meeting afresh are introduced to us via what Roger's descriptive is of us and what we're trying to achieve. So, yeah.
So where does outside of awareness to the officers, right, to the people who are experiencing this, where does education fall into what you guys are doing? And when I talk about education, I'm talking about education for an organization. I'm talking about education for the industry, right? Whether that be law enforcement, fire, EMS, whatever that is, that industry, or even a broad umbrella of all industries, right? So where does education fall into that with you guys? It's great to go out, and I love it. And I think it's so important that you go out and you're talking to the people who are directly impacted. But would you agree that half the battle though is the awareness, is getting those who are not impacted, right? Those who
Mhm.
for some reason are, enjoy an insular existence within those industries, right? Making them aware, because change has to start there too. I mean, I can accept that I'm damaged goods, and I can accept that I need to seek help, and I can accept that it's going to be a struggle and that I'm not perfect and all this other stuff. But if I got bosses, leadership, management, whatever, who's not on board, right? Who's not supporting that, am I spinning my wheels? I'd love to hear what you're thinking, and
Um,
I want to hear what you're
I,
thinking too.
I was just thinking, funnily enough, I was just thinking about those people that aren't affected and how you reach them. And I haven't spoken to Gary about this yet, but I had an idea today, but I'm going to pass you now.
Well, there you go. See, I'm psychic. That
You are, yes.
20 pounds,
20 pounds. That'll,
20
yes.
pounds. It was a really cheap reading.
Um, so I've been running my LinkedIn for nearly 4 or 5 years now, and I've got a lot of contacts, and I do post on there regularly about PTSD 999, about what we're doing, and every single post I put on, please take a look. I put a newsletter out. Take a look at what we're about, and get the awareness of what's happening in this could be something happening in your workplace that you don't know about. And that's a big thing as well in industry these days. It's how people are perceived, and knowing those little signs if somebody's not quite right, or if somebody's not themselves, or if there's a mood change, and being able to notice and not ignore. So I've actually thought, well, why don't we, and like I said, Gary, I've not spoken to you about this, why don't we start going out into local businesses and putting the word across face to face with a group of people that aren't affected, but can then have a vision of what people are going through that are affected. So the next time an emergency services worker turns up to, when you need them, you can see slightly differently. I don't know. Perception is a big thing, and making people think and making it that click. Anything we can do out there to do that, it's
Well,
worth it.
I think that we
And
talked about this earlier, and I want to get your input on this because it's something that we do that I want to see what you guys think about that. So one of the things that Tom and I do when we're teaching, one of the things we teach is we teach this, and I think I talked to you guys about this before when we had our initial meeting, is that we teach this the situational awareness, this leadership situational awareness, right? And leadership, when I'm talking about leadership, I don't actually mean, I mean, I do. It starts at the top, but it is also at the very lowest levels of an organization because we're all leaders in one way or another, right? Whether that's formal or informal, but situational awareness. And when I talk about situational awareness, or Tom talks about situational awareness, we're not always talking about the boogeyman behind every bush, right? We're talking about situationally aware of my people, of myself, what's going on within my organization. Where are we deficient? Where are we seeing problems? Why are we seeing these problems? Just being situationally aware of the things that impact our organization, our industry, our people. Do I know that, and we have a great example, and he's going to be one of our guests, so I'm not going to ruin the show, but we have an individual who fell into that, and I'm going to be honest with you. I was probably one of the contributors to that problem, is not recognizing signs of somebody who is going through things, right? Because they were in a specific assignment, would you say, or something for too long, right? And we're spiraling down. But as you put earlier, there's that, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. This is your job. This is what you signed up to do. So go out and do it. And we keep dumping on that, but wasn't situationally aware enough to see that this person is starting to go down a rabbit hole, right? They're starting to
yeah,
spiral out of control. So incorporating education on how to be a situationally aware leader. That's what I'm talking about. Something like that. What are your thoughts on that?
and that's bang on, Rick. I mean, during our presentation, especially the first half, we talk about the signs and symptoms, the perceived changes, the obvious changes. But the biggest contribution that anyone can give, whether they're at the top of the tree or just starting out at the bottom, is acceptance. We've already mentioned that word. Accept your thoughts, accept your feelings, accept what's gone on before you. One of the stats that we use over here, and especially with our presentation, is that it's expected that in civilian life, and that's from being the day you were born to the day you spin off and go to wherever you're going to, you will experience between 6 to 8 traumas in your lifetime. And that trauma could be anything. And these are very loose statistics, but they're statistics that are out there. If you serve in emergency services, it's suggested that you'll have between 6 to 800 traumas, plus your 6 to 8 from Civvy Street. Again, they're not bang on figures, but they're loosely used over here in the UK. So that's a lot of trauma, technically. But what we need to do is to get senior management, whether it's part of the first responders or the corporate world. And I'll go back to what we said right at the beginning. Everyone's an individual. Everyone will experience their own trauma. And we need to open those windows and those doors from the top down and encourage people to be very open and honest, or as honest as they can be, given the roles that they do. It will reduce long-term sick. Get us in with your recruits. Get us in there so we can give them the basic tools to understand the signs and symptoms and the long-term effects of being open to repeated trauma or a single trauma. We talk about vicarious trauma. Not a lot of people in the UK understand it. I didn't really understand it until we used the clip that we do in our presentation. And it's heartbreaking. It's a 3-minute audio clip of an elderly lady that was burgled about 4 or 5 years ago now. And she dials 999 over here, which is our emergency number. And she's talking to the call taker, and she's very, very distressed. And the call taker can obviously hear this in this old lady's voice. And the old lady's saying, I can't talk, I can't get my breath. It was 2 young men coming to my house. They've stolen my bag. They've done this. And as the call goes on, the elderly lady is getting weaker and weaker. And the call taker says, right, I'm going to call an ambulance for you. Hold on. Now, nobody knows what's coming next other than me because I've listened to it so many times. The moment that call taker says, hold on, the elderly lady takes her last breath and passes away on the end of the phone. The tone of voice in that call taker goes to a whole new level. She is frantic that she can't be there directly and start CPR, do whatever she needs to do to help this old lady. And then, she's distraught, and you can so hear that in her voice. And then you hear a bang on the door, and she says, the police here, and the call cuts off. So you've got to ask yourself, how much time did that call taker get to decompress from that horrific call before she took the next one? Mm. So to me, there's education. Let's get it in there. Let's make the bosses aware. Let's make the staff aware that there's only a certain point that we can all go to before we have to go, can I have a minute? Can I take a breath? Mm. And then if you can, start again, but start that process of talking, engaging. Because as you've rightly said, Rick, if you don't, you will end up going down a very dark rabbit hole, as I did, with almost disastrous consequences. And even then, there was still nobody there to help me. Hence, right. That's why we set this organisation up.
Right. Tom, what do you think?
Well, I think, it makes me wonder whether or not when you're talking about, especially when you're talking about senior leadership in regardless of the industry, or if it's in military or whatever else, are they just playing to the politics of the civilian bosses in the aspect of, because most of those guys have been in the position of, for us anyway, they don't start out as like a chief of police or, or a commissioner or whatever. They generally work their way up from being a patrol guy, or, the dude that's got boots on the street or boots on the ground, however, if it's military, and move their way up, so they've experienced this and they should recognize that it's a problem, but to me, it's almost like they're playing the political game to the civilian leadership and saying, oh, no, it's not a problem. You're right. Their civilian boss. No, I don't have it. I don't know why these guys have it when he's full of shit and he's as fucked up as anybody else. And so, but they're playing that game. They're trying to play that political game instead of standing up for their subordinates and their people and say, no, this is an issue that we need to address, not only as our individual agency, but as a country, because it's a countrywide issue. It's not localized to a little town or a major city or whatever else. It's everywhere,
So it's a worldwide issue, and I would like at some stage for us to be, have a PTSD 911, have a PTSD whatever the call number is for other places around the world, because it's not specific to a country, it's a generic issue, and I think for as long as the big bosses in any part of the industry, in any part of what we used to do, choose to ignore the elephant in the room, which is PTS, they're going to continue to lose men and women to suicide. They're going to continue to have people on long-term sick, and they're going to, continue to have holes in the system. And it's, I'm how can I put it? I get very humbled with like Roger, all the work and effort he's putting into partnering us and getting out there and spreading the word. Um, it's without people like Rog, then we would struggle even more than we currently are. And I think to nip this one in the bud is like, why should it be down to people like Roger and myself and my little team to get out there to make people aware of this massive problem? If I was to say to you, in the last apparent 3 years, we've had over 100 police officers die by suicide, right? And that's this year across the free services. That's without the prison service, and these are the only ones that we're aware of. We're nearly up to 30 suicides. It's too many, one too many, And
It absolutely is.
if Rogers wasn't out in the corporate world now with the experience of his military background and talking to people and getting people to understand, and you guys doing this, giving us a platform to say, look, let's not be ashamed of mental health. Why do we fucking know it drives me insane? Why do we get so frightened of the word mental health? Mental health is as important as your physical health. We can't run away from that.
It's
But
a
let's put
lack of
something back into it.
it's a lack
It's
of
a lack of knowledge. Yeah.
it's a lack of knowledge, but to some degree, my personal opinion, it's a lack of administrative courage.
Yeah. Hang on. That's it. I think you've just wrapped that one up there with
Yeah.
that simple sentence.
So
It is. Yeah. I mean, it's a taboo subject. It is for everyone. And that I don't think that's ever going to change. But if you can just sit in front of someone and just there's a guy that I met quite a while ago. He's a veteran and he struggles a lot on a daily basis. He goes to the pub every day and he sits outside the local pub on his own. Every afternoon he's there. And I met him. I think I met him at a local football club, and we got chatting. And I said to him, "Look, I'll come and have a beer with you." And I've been on a couple of times and just had a chat and had a chat with him. But his whole persona changes. He starts talking about what he used to do and talking about his experiences, and he just lights up. It's like he's back in the room kind of thing. We're back in that camaraderie, and for me, that just made my day. Just being able to do something, even though it's for an hour, I'd rather you spend an hour with somebody but it doesn't have to be extra. It can be anybody that's struggling. I'll talk to anyone, you know. I mean, I won't, I don't just go walk down the street and randomly talk to people. Because
well,
there's a bit of a stigma against that as well. But no,
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know, for somebody who's gone from, like Gary's gone from way in the depths of the darkness and come out the other side, you've got that experience of where you fell down and where you pick yourself up, and you can pass that on, and that's what it's all about. That's so important to let people know that there is somebody there that for them to talk to them, you know?
well, so why is this? So I'm going to ask a question of you guys. I'm actually going to ask a question of all three of you, and probably even myself. Okay. But why is this so personal to you?
For me, mate, it's what I put my family through and my young children was and is and will always be unforgivable. Equally, when I went to take my own life as a result of just not being able to cope anymore, I felt I'd let everyone down. I felt worthless. I was so isolated. Um, Nobody should be allowed to be in that situation. And I was literally less than a second away from stepping in front of a fast train. And it was as simple as that. And as that train come upon me, um, a weird thing to say, I was extremely calm, collected. And I just remember thinking, any second now, this is all going to be done, finished. No more pain, no more embarrassment. People can hopefully remember me as being the bloke they thought I was before I got ill. And I'll never forget looking at that poor old train driver as his train was like zooming towards me. I mean, his eyes come out on fucking stalks. It was like something out of a cartoon, bless him. And as he went rattling past, I fell back. And it was sort of like I sat there and had a good cry. Got home. Well, I got in the car, drove back home, told my old lady, the wife, what had happened. Had another cry. And then it was like, fuck, how was I allowed to be there? You know, this perception everyone had of me wasn't the bloke that I was. I was absolutely broken, beyond broken. And then the idea, some months later, once I'd accepted where I was, what I'd attempted to do, that was a big transitional point for me. It was like, right, now I've been put on a pedestal and people have made me out to be this, oh no, I used it earlier, the big roughy tufty fella. Well, I'm not. I'm anything but. However, I've now got an expectation to live up to. So if I could get back to that pedestal, that box to stand on and go, right, sit down, pin your ears back and fucking listen in because this is how it is. This is the reality of what we're talking about. And Roger will see it next week. I kid you not. The wave of emotion that comes through that room because I'm stood in front of a group, whether it be 3 officers or 300. I will have a cry. And I'm not ashamed to do it or embarrassed about it anymore because I'm human. And it's as simple as that. And watching other people, their reaction, and the messages I get afterwards are all very humbling and whatever. And then you get someone ring you up and just go, Gal, I just want to say to you, mate, thanks for saving my life. And I'm like, no, 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 I haven't done that. You've done that. You've made that brave step forward. You've opened up and accepted. I've just spoken about an experience. You've made that brave step forward. And long may it continue. That's what drives me on. And then say having good people like Rog on board, it just helps. It keeps me sane and it keeps me leveled because I've got good people around me. And you two guys doing this with us, it's incredibly humbling from my point of view. And I can't thank you both enough for allowing Roger and I to come on and have this sort of discussion. It's incredible what you're doing.
No, absolutely.
Honor's ours. Roger, what about you?
I'm a slightly different story. Excuse me. I lost, as we were telling on our last call, I lost 4 members of my family, one on each detachment within the space of 6 years. So I was in Cyprus, I lost my grandma, went back, came back, Cyprus again, lost my granddad. Then I went to the Falklands, lost my father-in-law, and then I went to the Falklands again and lost my dad. And I could not get back in time to see all 4 of them before they died.
Oh.
Now I know that's a completely different level of
Why?
my personal trauma.
Why?
Well, I'm not compartmentalizing it. I'm just saying it's a different than fighting on the front line. It's my trauma. But the thing that did it for me was 2 weeks after my dad's funeral, they sent me back on detachment. And if I didn't go back, I would go to Afghanistan 6 months later. So I went back and I lasted 2 days. I was drinking heavily. They sent me back home, and then I left the military. And I've also seen. I used to be at Brize Norton in London, near London, where they brought all the all the bodies back of the ladies and gents that had died in Afghanistan. And I've seen that, and I've seen the families and how devastating it is, and what I put my family through, and to see the people around you, like Gary said, the people around you suffering, it's just horrendous. It is absolutely horrendous. And like Gary had a moment where I looked in the mirror and I thought, what are you doing? You've got all of this network around you that just can do anything for you, anything to make you feel better. And I was an absolute nightmare. And I can't even think about who I was back then. It just upsets me too much. So I did something that I needed to do. So I drove myself into this where I am today because I've got responsibilities. My family rely on me. I'm giving back to them what I took away. And, that's where we are now. But at the same time, I don't want anybody else to go through that. So that's my drive behind this. That's my passion, and I can't wait to really see this grow and really, get involved and see all these people that are affected talk about it. Let it out. Don't be ashamed to talk. Don't be, like Gary said, don't be ashamed to cry. I sit and watch TV, and if there's a sad film comes on, I'm in floods of tears. And I'm like, but it is. If you can do that, yeah, you're part of the way there. Show your emotions. I'm a bloke. I don't care. I'll show it. I don't mind.
Mm.
If you want to laugh at me or call me whatever, that's your issue, not mine. So yeah, that's my driver.
I like it. What were your thoughts?
Well, I think it boils down to the fact I've seen some good friends of mine go through a lot of issues with specific traumas, and having to deal with those. Um, and then also just over the years, understanding and realizing that, because I think for the most part, like for me, I think I threw a lot of the my issues into work. And so like, just did more and did probably more reckless stuff than I should have been doing, I would say,
Now we're on the same page with you on that.
and so, well, yeah, you did supervise me for a while. And then just, kind of coming to that understanding that, those, that type of thing and doing those things was just symptomatic of the trauma that I'd seen over the years. And then come to the realization that, too, is that you look at things and when I'd say when PTS first started really coming to the forefront in the United States, it was more geared towards the military and whatnot. And having been, I'd been in the military and done that stuff. And then in law enforcement, realizing that, and then I can't remember who I was talking to somebody about it. And what they had told me was the difference is that a lot of times in the military, it's the trauma is contained. It's with the exception of certain organizations in the military, it's kind of short term. It happened on one deployment, or it happened within the confines of a 6-month rotation to somewhere. Whereas when you're in as a first responder, and in law enforcement, it's long-term PTS. So you're dealing with it from the day you put the uniform on till the day you take it off. And then even at that, you're still dealing with it afterwards because you got 25, 30, 35 years of that long-term trauma that's affected you. And then how do you deal with that, and how do you move on from that and that type of thing. So
Interesting. I like that. I think that's real insightful. I think that's important too. I think that you bring up a lot of important things. For me, I think that for me, it falls along a different sort of a line for me. Family, what I've done to my family or how it impacted my family, plays a big role, just like with all of you, right? But for me, why it's important to me is because I've seen certain things that have caused me concern, not just within myself, but within the the industry, if you will, right? And a couple of those things is as I went through my career, like told you before, I was always very stoic when it comes to certain things, right? I can be an I'm outgoing kind of individual, but when it comes to my personal well-being, I'm kind of stoic in that sense that I don't share and I don't want to project. I mean, it's always been a mindset of mine of not projecting that weakness, right? You always got to be on your game. There's that, you got to be mentally and physically tough, and to my physical detriment. I mean, and Tom can attest to this. How many times, I've gone through major physical trauma only to push myself to come back, right? But it wasn't until I had the realization of what that does to the people around me, not just the guys that I work with guys on my team or whatever, but my family, my wife, my children, that type of stuff. Every time I'm traumatized, they're traumatized too. And that became a focus for me is you start to see what you're doing to your family, right? Not just how they feel about you, but the traumas that develops within them. Because each one of those is a trauma for them too. And that's, I think, something that we forget is, we're basically breeding trauma, right?
Yeah.
For other people, for the people that care about us. And what I also saw, why this is so important, and I think for me, why it's personal, and I've seen it, and Tom and I've had this conversation, and I want you to pipe in for what you've seen. But here in the United States, there's come this full cycle to where we never talked about PTSD, PTSI, whatever it is that you want to, however you view it, okay, whatever your definition of each is. But for the longest time, we never talked about it, right? It was taboo. But then as it started to come to the forefront of our problems, our existence as officers, first responders, military, all that, right? There came with it a sort of a cool factor, as our CDI factor, chicks dig it factor, right? Where everybody and their brother wants to say, I have PTSD, right? Or I have PTSI, because it makes me look like I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, I'm somebody, I've done something, right? And that adds value to who they are. And in my opinion, and why it's so important is to bring the recognition of what it really is to the forefront, because what that does is it diminishes what it really is, right? It takes us down the wrong path. And I see this with young officers, and the first thing they'll say, and I'm not dismissing that they may have had a trauma here or there, and maybe that haunts them to some degree. But when everybody has PTSD, PTSI, then nobody has it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And it creates in my opinion, it creates a cycle of dysfunction, and it creates an ultimate cycle of you're going to crash and burn at some point. Because we make our own destinies a lot of times, right? And if being in distress and having some type of post-traumatic stress disorder or injury is so important to me to be able to claim that, I'm going to create a self-fulfilling prophecy for myself. And then that, in my opinion, does so much more harm. So that's mine.
Yeah, it's such a valid point. We just need to recognize it for what it is. And the only reason that we're struggling, like you've rightly said, is because whilst everyone is running that way, we're running that way towards the danger, the trauma, and we've got to deal with it as best we can. And clearly there is so many variants in the way we operate in this country to the way that you do in your country. You carry firearms as a matter of course. We don't. There's only specialised firearms officers that do that. So when we go into a job, invariably all we've got is a baton, a capture spray, or I had a taser. Whoopee shit. You're still running towards that individual with a knife, with a gun, with whatever. And the best bit of kit anyone could ever give you is the ability to be, how can we put it, to verbally reason with someone. If you can talk to them and they get it, 9 times out of 10, you're going to de-escalate that situation and resolve it. If you can't, you then go down to their level of verbalization. And if you've got to swear and cuss and curse and do whatever to make them understand, well, 9 times out of 10, that was individual I was working with in and around London or East London. Yeah, I'll bring myself down to that level because that's the level I've come from. And I'm no better than that person other than I'm wearing a uniform. And I think, again, we can, Rod's probably nod his head with this one. When we was in the military, yeah, when you was in basic training, you got shouted at and you got screamed at and you was beasted to within an inch of your life. However, once you got through that process, you was all part of that one big team. And the word's been mentioned, that camaraderie. It's phenomenal. And you're part of a special group of people. And at least, you can talk to those people. And that's the key element there, And if you haven't got the trust to do that, then we say to people, well, phone us up, speak to us. You can trust us. We're not going to talk to anyone about you. We'll sit, we'll listen. And the reason we're listening is because we understand, because we struggle with the same condition. And, who am I to judge anyone? It's listening is a great leveler. And trust me, I never used to be like that. I'll take no nonsense from anyone. I'll tell them to shut the fuck up and whatever else and grip them up and that's it, job done. But I've learned over the years now that that's not always the best way to achieve your aim. And by doing what we're doing, and Rod's getting out amongst the corporate world on our behalf, people are listening. They're starting to listen, and it's so valuable, And as I say, using this platform, it's enormous.
Well, I love that you guys have come on and joined us, and we've had these conversations, and I think it's important. If you had to leave our listeners with one brief but pointed message, what would it be?
For me, simply be kind to everyone, be kind to yourself, and just listen. We're all different, but often we follow similar paths. Just look after each other and look after yourself.
Roger?
Yeah, just mirror what Gary said, really, but just be situationally aware is a great one. I love that. And just like you said, just be kind. Just have that ear to listen. If somebody needs that 5 minutes to talk to them. Just just be in that moment with them.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Oh, not.
You guys kind of froze there for a second. Voices came through, but you did kind of freeze there for a second, but that's all right. Well, guys, hey, how do people tune in? How do people get a hold of you? How do people get into talk with you, both in the UK?
So
I'm sure there's going to be people here who would love to have a chat with you.
Yeah, apparently we've got a pretty big following out in the States, which is amazing. I think we've got quite a big footprint in the UK, and I think outside of the UK, America follows up quite nicely. So yeah, have a look at us on all the social media platforms. Look out for PTSD999. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those weird and wonderful platforms, and just have a look at us. And if you do want to touch base with us, our email address is there on our website. The phone number on there is my personal number. So if you want to have a chat, please give us a call. I need some new friends. I'm running out of friends in the UK at this moment, so give me a call. And if I miss the call, always leave me a voicemail, and I will call you back. I don't randomly ring people up anymore. It was causing too many dramas. I was sort of re-triggering people in the early days, which I was unaware of. So yeah, just follow us on our social medias platforms, and we'd love to talk to you.
All right.
From a corporate side, obviously my LinkedIn's very active, so I mentioned PTSD on there quite a lot. You guys have got, you've got my LinkedIn. Danny Mee's got my LinkedIn. So anybody that just wants to touch base and have a chat outside of the PTSD 999 world and see, just have a chat on what we're doing and how we're trying to get that awareness. And yeah, please feel free.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for joining us, guys.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
This has been a great show. I hope our listeners enjoy it. Tune in, watch the show, spread it around. Get the word out there. Reach out to these guys if you need help. It's okay. There's also services here in the U.S., so reach out to whoever you can. All right. Until next time, thanks so much. Be safe out there.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very